And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips.
And I'm Terry Moran. And our top story this hour, a new witness is on the stand in the trial of Donald Trump for the hush money payments. This comes after adult film star Stormy Daniels faced another round of fierce cross-examination.
The former president front and center as he listened to Daniels answer heated questions about her allegations as to Trump and the elaborate lengths that he went through trying to conceal that $130,000 to her to be quiet. All this coming as court is expected to wrap up earlier than usual today as the defense is now renewing calls for a mistrial. Let's bring in our investigative reporter, Olivia Rubin. She is outside court, along with executive editorial producer John Santucci and legal journalist and senior editor at Harvard Law School, Christian Farias. Olivia, let's start with you. What has happened in court thus far?
Well, testimony has taken a dramatic turn this afternoon after the jury spent a day and a half hearing, of course, that explicit testimony from Stormy Daniels and then a combative cross-examination. Now that that is over, they have returned to some of the more mundane testimony of this case. They heard from a bookkeeper at Trump Tower who talked about being the one who personally mailed Donald Trump the checks to Washington, D.C. when he was in the White House so that he could sign them. And now they're hearing from a potentially key witness here, Madeleine Westerhout. She was the executive assistant to Donald Trump at the White House and later the director of White House operations. She was so close to Donald Trump during that time, so deeply entwined in his schedule, that she told the jury she earned a nickname in the press called the Greeter because she saw everyone who came into the Oval Office. So there are a number of ways that prosecutors could use her here and could get specific testimony into the record. Specifically, recall earlier in the trial, David Pecker spoke about an Oval Office meeting that he had with former President Donald Trump to essentially to thank him for what he did with buying the story. So she could speak to that. But it has been an interesting dynamic with Westerhout and Donald Trump in the courtroom. She joked earlier on that she was very nervous to testify, that she had never been in a courtroom before. And he looked at her with a smile and looked on quite lovingly, actually.
All right. Well, there great reporting from inside the courtroom. Thank you, Olivia. And Kristen, let me get to you on Stormy Daniels now has left the witness stand. A lot of people were fascinated by, as Olivia says, the explicit nature of her testimony. The jury has a job to do here. They have to find out whether Trump should be held guilty of the misdemeanor charge of falsifying business records and make it a felony by saying that was done to pursue another crime. How much will they get from Stormy Daniels' testimony, explicit or otherwise, in order to make the decision they have to make?
It's interesting, Terry, because as salacious as Ms. Stormy Daniels' testimony was, it's in fact in service of a greater narrative and a greater purpose for the prosecution, which is to tell the story of this concealment of the falsification of a business record, the 34 counts in the indictment that Mr. Trump has been charged with. And in order to make that otherwise kind of technical, boring case, which consists of paper trail, of business records, of bookkeeping, as we're seeing now with the current testimony, you have to tell this broader story of trying to influence an election. And that's where Stormy comes in. That's where Michael Cohen comes in. And to keep the jurors' interest, really, that's why you needed her there. And in a way, now that the testimony has gotten more technical at the moment, it's kind of back to business, and hopefully the jurors can connect the dots. And that's what closing arguments are for, where prosecutors will put it all together, and then jurors have to make a determination if all of it makes sense beyond a reasonable doubt.
So, John, the judge actually shut down the defense's motion for a mistrial on Tuesday, but now they're renewing their push. Why?
Well, because now Stormy Daniels is done, right? And the reality is the damage is also done in their eyes. That Stormy Daniels was on that stand for now, in total about a day worth of testimony, several hours of testimony, all of which they believe was a bridge too far. So they're renewing their claims that a mistrial here is warranted because in their eyes, too much of this information has tainted the jury. Now, look, we know what Judge Juan Merchan did on Tuesday, Kira, when this came up the first time. He said, I don't think we're there yet. There's no reason to think that something else happened over the course of Stormy Daniels' cross-examination and redirect, and then another cross-examination that happened today in that lower Manhattan courtroom that would change Judge Juan Merchan. But look, they get documented, they're on the record, all of which could help their appeal efforts if they need to do it if Donald Trump loses this case down the road. I do think, though, it'll be interesting how many other items they get to in 4 o'clock. What I mean by that is that they've put 3 different items on the agenda. Mistrial goal being 1. 2, get Karen McDougal, the other woman that Donald Trump's team, or allies, if you will, being David Pecker, caught and killed her story to bury it, saying that we don't want her testimony here. No sign as of now that prosecutors intend to call Karen McDougal, but nevertheless something to get ahead of. And the third thing, which we know we've been talking about for quite some time, is this limited gag order on Donald Trump, right? And the confines that is put on him. We know that he's, touched that red line several times already, $10,000 worth of touching that red line. But clearly, after the Stormy Daniels testimony, you got to imagine in part, well, okay, if you're not going to give us a mistrial, Judge, give us something here, because we know and we saw Donald Trump's body language in real time, so frustrated by all of this, pushing his attorneys to object during Stormy Daniels' testimony, that maybe they want some type of way to give their client a little bit of what he wants.
See if you can get it. Olivia, look, we're in the 3rd week of testimony, I believe, and you've been covering it from the beginning. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me, Olivia?
I got you now, yeah. I got you, Terry.
Good. I'll shout. We're in the 3rd week of testimony. You've been covering this case from the beginning. What's your takeaway at this point? Or maybe I could ask it this way. What have you learned about this case by covering it so closely?
Well, we've learned very deeply the inner workings of the Trump organization, how it made its finances, how it made its records. And then we also learned, again, very deeply about this catch and kill scheme that Donald Trump allegedly entered into, and what prosecutors did in starting to present their case is sort of show their hand and just how much evidence they had to back up their claims here. I think it was a surprise just a few days ago when they presented the handwritten notes of Alan Weisselberg and Jeff McConnell sketching out on pen and paper exactly how the repayment plan to Michael Cohen was going to work. So they have gone so deep into detail with these payments. They have talked about the drop-down menu of labeling it as a legal expense. They have talked about the phone calls, the voice recordings that went on during the catch and kill scheme. There has been sort of no details spared, but what they still have not done, Terry, is connect the link to Donald Trump in terms of the repayment plan. They have shown the catch and kill scheme. They have shown the records. I don't think there's really much doubt that they were labeled this way, and Donald Trump's team is not opposing it. But the evidence that has yet to be entered is the link, again, to Donald Trump, and just exactly why it was him that should be blamed for the way that these records were categorized, and why he had the intent to categorize them that way. So it is expected that much of that is going to come from Michael Cohen, but still waiting for that middle link there, Terry.
Yeah. Great.
All right, so Christian, we're also waiting for Michael Cohen now to take the stand. What do you think? Is his testimony possibly a make or break for the prosecution's case, kind of knowing already where he's going to go, and then you never know what he's going to pull out of his pocket either?
It's funny because back in 2018, when it first came out that Michael Cohen was involved in something, in trying to cover up something for Donald Trump, I was in the courtroom in the federal courthouse in downtown Manhattan, the Southern District of New York, and it was all a mystery. And now, as more and more details have been coming out, it seems like this will be the final act. It seems like everything has been building up to this moment, and for him to finally face the person that he said one day he would take a bullet for him, and now he's pointing the finger at him. Obviously, everyone is looking at this, but the open question is what Olivia said earlier, whether prosecutors can connect everything that happened as if all of them, Weisselberg, Cohen, Trump, Mr. Pecker, they were all in on this scheme to falsify these business records. And if that connection can be made, I imagine all the prosecution can do is make that connection, and then the defense simply to undermine it as much as possible. So fireworks are coming, and I think everyone is looking forward to that.
Yeah, thank you, Christian. So, John, this is really a make-or-break witness coming up, Michael Cohen, and a proven liar, an admitted liar, frequent liar, habitual liar, tough witness to sell to the jury. So as you look back at this case, I'll ask you the same question I asked Olivia. What have you learned? You know the Trump organization, the Trump system so well, that the prosecutors have brought in essentially to help make that connection between Trump personally and this scheme.
It's funny, you know, this idea of something I saw firsthand, Terry, I remember it was December of 2015, seeing Donald Trump being followed on his plane that he flew around the country when he campaigned for the White House the first time, followed by a box, and the box inside it had checks that he liked to sign personally. The fact that that checking account is still the one that Donald Trump controlled. Recall in January, just 4 days before the inauguration in 2017, Donald Trump said he was stepping out, right? Stepping out of all control of his family business. He was turning the keys of the kingdom over to his sons and to his longtime CFO, Alan Weisselberg. So he was out of the Trump family business and finances. Clearly not. And clearly, this revealing details about how checks were sent down to the White House and the habits that Donald Trump had conducted as a businessman continued even when he went to the White House, personally signing those checks. And what's fascinating right now, if we can take you into the courtroom for a second, our Peter Haralambos just flagged that Madeleine Westerhout is being asked exactly about those details right now. And the fact that Mr. Trump, as she referred to him, former President Trump, personally signed everything. And Madeleine Westerhout was just asked by prosecutors from the Manhattan DA's office, did he read everything before he signed it? And she said yes. That is what I observed years ago of Donald Trump, and I think the fact that as commander-in-chief, sitting behind the Resolute desk, he still continued a tactic that I saw covering him as a reporter, and many people clearly saw as they observed him or worked for him at the Trump Organization.
That's a great detail, great insight. John Santucci, Olivia Rubin, Christian Farias, thanks very much.